Hey, well, welcome everybody. It is What's Up, No Learn Fly here from AOPA. Glad to have you all with us here where we are this cold January day. As you can see, our topic is Pick Our Brains. Hopefully you picked up on that little one. It's frequently asked questions from AOPA's Pilot Information Center. So glad to have you all here with us. But as always, let's make sure we just run through some of the basics before we get started. So if you are using like the computer, you want to look for the menu here, and you're going to see basically a little question bubble there. And you're going to want to click on that, and then it'll pop up and give you a spot to write in your question. Most importantly, please make sure you hit that send button, and that way we make sure that we see it, because we'd love to get your questions. If you happen to be on a tablet, you're looking for the little question mark that'll be somewhere up here in this right-hand corner. Again, type in your question and make sure you hit that send button to make sure everything is good to go. And you guys all see on the screen okay? Just double checking.
I'm not seeing the slides advance, Chris.
Okay, well, that's why I wanted to double check, because I paused something earlier. Let's see, is it working now?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, real quick again, here's that question bubble I talked about on the PC. Here is the place where you type the question. There's that send button. Here's a little question for the tablet. Type it in here, hit the send button. Hopefully everybody got that. Here we go. All right, hey, my name, as always, is Chris Moser. I work here at AOPA, helping out CFIs and flight schools, doing things like our awards and our Flight School Business Network. So glad to be here with you. And as always, I'm glad to be joined by Dan Justman.
Chris, I love how you always say, as always, my name is. That is one that has not changed yet. I love it. You've got a great name. Stick with it. That's great. Happy to be here, everyone. Dan Justman, Vice President of You Can Fly. Honored and privileged to lead the You Can Fly initiatives and the great people and teams that bring those programs to life every day. I am pleased to introduce our friend here at HQ, one of our many friends here at HQ, Mr. Tom Zecha.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom. Glad to be with you today.
Awesome.
And
very
Tom,
good.
a little bit about your background real fast.
Well, I'm the director of the AOPA Pilot Information Center and just recently became the Aviation Safety Program Manager of our flight department, overseeing our safety management system.
Cool. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
We'll be tapping into that brilliant resource here for sure. Also would like to introduce Paul Feldmeyer. Paul, tell us about yourself.
I'm one of the senior techs here. I've been here, I'll be 12 years in June. CFI, IMEI, all that good stuff, and do a lot of jobs, wear a lot of hats around, helping everybody around the building. That's what we do.
Awesome. We've got the right team on this call today. We appreciate you guys being with us. Also, would love to introduce our friend, Steven Schroeder. Say hello, Steven.
Hello, Steven.
There it is.
There it is. Coordinator of the Flight Training Initiative. I work with Chris and Dan directly doing all kinds of project management things, including producing this webinar. So it's always a joy to be here.
All right, Dan, go ahead.
Awesome. Everything that we do with the You Can Fly teams is donor funded, and that's done through the philanthropic arm of AOPA, the AOPA Foundation. So if you like programs like What's Up and other resources through developed and produced and delivered through the You Can Fly initiatives, we could use your support and would love to ask for your partnership with that. So if you're interested in supporting, please do so, aopafoundation.org.
All right, and man, this is the most important slide. Go ahead, Dan.
Yep, I haven't seen the questions pop up yet, but we're going to beat them to it. Wings credit, yes, if you are watching this webinar live, you will be eligible for Wings credit. Hopefully, you have registered for this webinar with your FAAsafety.gov email address. If you have done so, there's nothing more that you need to do. We'll take care of it. Stephen will submit all the attendees to the FAA. A couple days that credit will show up. If you aren't sure if you've used that your FAAsafety.gov email address, please email us ftinitiative@aopa.org, FT Flight Training Initiative at aopa.org, and we will help verify that with you. And also, you've heard something today that you want to double check on or want to just go back and watch this webinar again, yes, you can do that. We are recording this webinar. It will show up on YouTube on the What's Up playlist and also AOPA Pilot video at webinars.aopa.org. Those will be up in a couple days. Please feel free to go back and review.
And hey, Steven, just one correction. We didn't edit this one, but do you have the spreadsheet thing, the link instead to use instead of emailing FT Initiative?
I do have that. I can share that in the questions and chat forms here in a little bit.
Okay, so for those folks looking to double check your email, if you would, Stephen will put the link into the chat and it'll have a form that you'll go to, and it just makes it easier for him to go and double check this. So rather than emailing FT Initiative with that email check out the link that he'll put in the chat instead. All right, let's go, Stephen. What do you got for history today?
All right, so I went with something that happened this week versus what happened specifically today, but in 1935, United Airlines decided to equip a de-icing system for their wings. Apparently, there had been some experimenting on the Boeing 247 and showed that it actually worked, and they decided to incorporate this technology onto all the aircraft to reduce ice buildup on their wings and make it safer to fly.
Very cool.
Does anyone know what that system was?
I would have to go and look a little bit deeper to give you more specifics on that.
Yeah,
And how would you like to be the test pilot on that flight?
Well, considering they probably flew through icing anyway,
Yeah.
like if you're like Fate of the Hunter, is probably
What do you got to lose?
what they were doing exactly. All right, hey, let's talk about what we're going to do today. The biggest thing is that I already see questions pouring in, which is awesome because you were asking the right people. These Tom and Paul here from our Pilot Information Center. But we went ahead and we kind of came up with some of the common questions that they get that we'll make sure that we talk about. And we were certainly going to answer as many of your questions as we can. Of course, we always have a big audience here on What's Up. And I just want to, we'll do the best we can as we do. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We'll do a really quick overview of just what the Pilot Information Center is so that you as an AOPA member know that you can take advantage of it. We'll talk a little bit about some of the questions that they get about medical regs and basic med, which are pretty common ones that they hear about. A really hot topic right now, CFI certificate changes that have just happened in the past couple of months. We had a couple of viewer questions that people submitted, so we'll answer those as well. Airport issues, logging time, landing currency, chart questions, whether VFR or IFR. It's common things that people ask about aircraft ownership. And then finally, if you have legal or medical questions, just what resources are available to you. Also, please check the handout. We put links to a lot of the things we're going to talk about and resources that AOPA and other like FAA links and things for you. So check it out. There should be a PDF on your little menu on the side where you can grab that. Okay, let's do it. So first of all, whether it's Tom or Paul, do you want to tell us a little bit about just what the PIC is?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. Of course, as the slide sets there, we're staffed with pilots. We're all pilots on the aviation side of things here, and range from CFIs to aircraft mechanics. We have a couple of AMPs and one IA as well. Also have a gentleman that's really well versed in the financial end of buying and selling aircraft. So we run the whole gamut. Our medical staff, we have 5 of those. They're specifically answering questions about medical certification. Paul and I aren't part of that team, but we do have the basic medical understanding of that. And then we have digital product support. We have 2 people that can help you troubleshoot any problems you might have with, firing up a course, taking the flight instructor refresher course online, a whole variety of things. So they can help with that. Collectively in ATS, we have, I'd say approximately maybe about 50 to 60,000 flight hours between us, and really, really helpful. So, we're happy to talk to you any day of the week, Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 6 p.m. And you see the phone number there, also our email address. We also, if you on our website, there's a chat function, and during certain hours of the day, you'll see that'll be live, and you can ask us questions as well.
Yeah, that appears, I think, in that little lower right-hand corner or something pops up for the chat.
Yes, yeah, when it's active. Yeah, so, and we've been doing this, actually, I've been here, I'm going on my 20th year. I didn't say that earlier, but, the PIC has actually been around since the early 90s, I believe. So it's, gone on for quite some time, and it's been a huge benefit of AOPA as a member. So.
All right, Paul, anything you wanted to add to that before we go to the next slide?
Nope. He's the salesman for the PIC. I just work here.
Hey, I did that too. So
Yeah, so did I for
Chris.
my first year at AOPA. Yep, we've been there with you. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into the first question. So I called this the magical medical reg, mainly because when we were prepping for this, Paul, you were like, this reg has everything in it. So I know some of the questions you typically said people ask about, or they call up and say they were told you can't take a check ride using basic med or something along those lines. So can you tell us a little bit more about what they can find in 6123 regarding that and how they can use that reg?
So generally 6123, if you have a question about what you can do or what you need or what the requirements are, 6123 is where you should start. And the specific reg is 6123 Alpha 3. Now it throws a lot of people off because it starts off with must hold at least a third-class medical certificate.
Right.
And a lot of people look at that and they'd skip over it because, well, this isn't basic med. Well, the way the FAA, when basic med became a thing, how they wrote the regs is they didn't. They just added on. So we have a lot of people who are like, well, I can't go do my CFI check ride with basic med because you got to have a commercial pilot certificate as a prerequisite for that rating. So I need to have at least a second class medical. That's not true. You can take even up to an ATP check ride using basic med. You can't exercise the privileges, but you certainly can do it. So in there, it says, for instance, let's say practical test. That's the one that comes up a lot. We even have DPEs calling up. It says must hold at least a third-class medical certificate when taking a practical test in an airplane for rec, private, commercial, or ATP, or for a flight instructor certificate. And then everybody stops reading. They don't read the section that says except when operating under the conditions and limitations set forth under 61113I, which is basic med. So it doesn't come out and say basic med. It references the reg that references basic med. And then if you go to 61113I, it redirects you back to 6123 just a further back or further down in the regulation to Charlie. So if you got a question about medicals, especially basic med, start in 6123. You'll probably end up back there, but you'll find your answers.
So a little bit of looping around probably to make it easier for them when they were adding things to the regs, but it's in there. Yes, you can use basic med for check rides and all the other options. And if you got questions, hopefully Paul answered them right there. But if not, you can always give PIC a call or send them an email and double check it. Yep. All right. So lots of good stuff there. Let's keep. I know that basic med is coming up here again because I know that I see all the time in the day reports that you guys submit. People are always asking about basic med or mainly about renewing it. It becomes an issue, right? So it's like, how do they participate in basic med, and then what's confusing about the renewal that you guys find?
Well, there was a change recently during the FAA reauthorization, because it used to be that the medical itself, the CMEC, the Comprehensive Medical Exam Checklist, was good for 48 months. And that's atypical because everything in aviation is calendar months. So recently they changed it. They changed it to calendar months. So now it's good to the end of the month, just like a flight review, your CFI rating, all that stuff. It's good to the end of the month. People confuse that. They trip over themselves. They don't understand that the medical, you have to take the online course every 24 calendar months. So you have 2 dates that you're monitoring, and you kind of have a bye year where you don't go see the doctor, but you do need to take the course. And when taking that course, you resubmit the web form, and you just put the old medical information in there. Get your certificate, you're good to go for another 24 calendar months.
And just a little background on, well, people are like, well, why is that out of sync? Why wasn't it always every 24 calendar months and every 48 calendar months? This came through through legislation. And in the legislation, it had the CMEC to the day. So it took this long for the FAA to be able to sync that up because it came through with legislation. It wasn't done regulatory. And also, if you want to check that, they changed the wording, and that as well is in 6123. Let's see, where is it here? 6123C, and then under 3C, and it actually lays it out right in there. So that 6123 comes back again as a very helpful reg.
Cool. And maybe for that broader picture, just in case we've got any student pilots out there or whatever, but basically basic med is an option you can use rather than taking the regular medical. Although in order to use basic med, you can't have had a medical, an FAA medical denied, suspended, revoked, and you have to have held a FAA medical. What was the date? I don't remember off the top of my head.
June 15th, July 15th, 2006. If you've held a valid one after that, from that date or forward. Yeah.
So if you're a new student pilot, you do have to go get an FAA medical, assuming you're going to be doing something that requires it. You have to get it one time, and then after that, you can start participating in basic med, which is typically easier to get renewed and all that sort of stuff. Dan?
Hey guys, have a question from Wendell. What happens if you exceed either the 24 months or the 48 months?
So
just not,
it's just like a flight review. So you got to get right with the regulation. There is no penalty, but you got to get right with the regulation. So if you exceed either one of them, you just need to comply. But you have to realize that if you skip it, your medical's still only good for 48 months. So if you didn't take your course at 24 months, you can't fly until you're right with the regulation. But you got to remember, now you're messing up your dates. So now you got to really remember, well, my course is going to expire 24 months, but my medical might expire in 22 months. So you got to pay attention to those two dates.
Right.
And let me add to that real quick. For those of you wondering, well, gosh, if I forgot, exactly what month or what date, you can go out to the FAA.gov under Airman Certification and look it up under the Airman Inquiry. Look yourself up, and it will give you the date you took the course and the date you did your CMEC. Okay, now that'll give you the specific date. So whatever month, you have to the end of that month to do it.
One thing there too, I was just remembering as well, because I seem to remember seeing that in some of those daily reports too, is that people need to make sure they submit, like usually go to the doctor first, right? Go to your physician first, get the form. So that way, when you take the course, you can submit that thing at the end, because there are people that sometimes don't do that, right?
Yeah, there's the trick to that, and the reason why people are like, oh, I'm taking the course, but I can't get my certificate. Well, you have to have a current CMEC, because at the end, it's going to ask you for the physician's name and the physician's license number. You have to put those in there. If you don't have those, meaning you didn't take the CMEC, you can't complete the course. Okay. Now, if you're doing it for the second time through the course, you still use when you did it 2 years prior with your doctor. That's still good to do the course again. So you'd use the same, because you're not due for another CMEC 2 more years after your first renewal. Yeah.
And Tom, that CMEC, just in plain terms, is the doctor exam, right?
Yeah, it's the Comprehensive Medical Examination Checklist is officially what it is. But we have acronyms for everything. CMEC is how we discuss it. So.
Well, and the important thing is that an FAA medical with an AME does not count.
Correct.
So if you had an FAA medical and let's say you let that expire, it does not count. It has to be a specific medical examination for basic med with a specific form.
Couple questions, have come through about the 24 and 48 months. Obviously makes sense that is the time that you should get it done in, but is there any penalty or any consequence of doing it early?
Nope.
Or those dates are the same? Okay.
No, you can do it
just
every
reset your dates. Yeah, it just resets your dates. And some folks actually, to keep it together, they'll do it every 24 or every 24 months, especially those gals that have a primary care physician that they see at least once a year. They'll march in with the form again. So.
But remember, the FAA doesn't know unless you tell them.
Yes.
So you're going to have to retake the course to tell them when your new medical is, because that's how it's submitted to the FAA.
Correct.
All right. So hopefully we got that. There may be more questions, of course. We want to move on to the next topic, and we can hit more of those at the end. But we knew this would be a good topic, which is why we brought that one up. Let me go ahead and jump to this next one now. This is for our CFIs out there. So I know we've got lots of other folks that may not be CFIs, so we'll try to keep this one fairly succinct. But this has been a hot topic question right now because of the recent changes. So guys, can you help us out? What is going on with this CFI certificate expiration date? And anybody out there will know when the CFI signs in your logbook, they put their expiration date down. There's been a big change.
Yeah, so I'm the chief babysitter of the EFERC, so I'll take this one. suffice to say, nothing has changed as far as renewals, if you want to think of it that way. If you've been doing a FERC every 2 years, just keep doing it.
What's a FERC, real quick, Paul?
Flight instructor refresher course.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter if it's with us or anybody else. Basically, nothing has changed for you. You still have a renewal window as the 3 months prior to and the month of expiration. Just keep doing what you're doing. The reason the FAA removed the expiration date is because it was costing them a lot of money to send everyone a new CFI every 2 years. So what they're doing is they're removing the expiration date from the back of the certificate. Now you're going to have a recency period end date, or recency end date, whatever you want to call it. It's an expiration date. So it'll no longer be on the certificate. It will be in the airman registry. So like the basic med, go in there and look yourself up. As a, I guess, a peace offering with this, you end up having a reinstatement period. Now, reinstatement is a 4-letter word when it comes to CFIs because that usually means a check ride. But what you're looking at here is you have your 4-month window where you can normally renew or get your recency back now. In addition to that, like for me, I expired this April. I did my stuff in January. That's in my renewal window because I've got no excuse. I work here. If I let my stuff go and I'm sitting in May, I'm in my reinstatement period. There's a new 3-month window after your expiration or your recency date is gone where you can reinstate your CFI using a FERC or taking a check ride. Once you go out of that 3-month window, so like me in April, I would have till July, but in August, I'm doing a check ride. Now, this isn't like trying to skip ahead on a 100-hour inspection or something like that. You're going, if say I did it in July at the last possible minute, I'm going to end up with April again. So they're going to backdate me. And now that we don't have expiration dates, we have recency ends. You're going to put RE instead of EXP when you endorse a student.
Cool. Also, just like a flight review, if you're going to wait and do it in that reinstatement period, you cannot instruct. It's like a flight review. You're not can't do it. Not legal to do it.
So basically, you can act as a CFI. It's like instrument currency.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Right. So, all right. So good. I'm hoping that's clear. And again, we won't spend on too much time on this one just because we know the majority of our audience is not CFIs. But one other thing we should let the CFIs know, just in case, by the way, there is an article that I put on the handout that covers all and a couple of other changes that have happened recently too. So check that one out. It's got a title that should be close. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but it's in the handout. But what's this deal with the TSA requirement for CFIs now?
You get that, Tom?
Yeah. Yeah, with the TSA requirements, well, a couple things have changed real quickly. First of all, the security course that CFIs have to take, that was every year. Now that's every 2 years. So you can sync that up with your CFI renewal, a smart way so you don't forget about it. The requirement to register with the TSA, that is a new item they've included, and what they want is to be able to communicate with the instructors, have that immediate contact with them for whatever reason they may need. Now, some folks are getting all wrapped around the axle on this, like, hey, I work for a flight school. Do I have to do this? Well, no, you don't, because if you think about how everything was set up with the TSA, if you are a flight school with several flight instructors, there's an admin for the flight school. So that's the contact they've always had. That person will automatically become the security coordinator under this. So you wouldn't have to register. You work for the school, it's taken care of. If you're an independent instructor, then yes, then you simply go out to the TSA website and log into that, and you can register with them, and it's it's with your email and so forth. So that it opens it up to just have a line of communication with the TSA. Again, this is if you're an active instructor, independent instructor, then you would do this.
Whether they're planning on teaching foreign nationals or not, they have to register. Yeah,
correct.
It doesn't have to be primary students. It could be flight reviews. So if you work at a flight school and you do flight reviews on the side, you need to register as an independent as well.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. All right. And then this next one, just to show the breadth again, because we're going to kind of go all over the place because you guys answer questions from all over the place. We did have a viewer submit a question about Well, let's just read it. 62 years old. This is from Aaron or Anton. Single engine pilot with less than 1,000 hours. What would you recommend that I do? Just enjoy retirement or continue to pursue this crazy idea of flying over crops in a single engine, AKA obviously ag flying? I know, Paul, you kind of jumped right in when we showed you this one earlier. So what's your advice here?
Well, you can enjoy your retirement and do this job if you want to. I'm not going to dispute the craziness of ag flying, but that's neither here nor there. There is a group out there specific to ag pilots. It's the National Agricultural Aviation Association. I would highly encourage you reach out to them. Don't know what your ratings are, don't know what your experience is specifically. Obviously, you can get a commercial rating without having a instrument rating. That's what a lot of the ag pilots have. I'm not aware of any limitations for ag flying by age or any of that kind of stuff, but insurance seems to be the killer of all things nowadays. So definitely want to make sure that if you go through all this training and there's specialized schools out there for this stuff, that you can actually get a job when you get out, because insurance companies may refuse to hire you even though you have your stuff.
All right, good to go. And we put a link to that organization on the handout, so for your reference. All right, like you guys, here's another one. Let me just jump to this next slide. Again, all over the place. You guys will get phone calls, and I remember Tommy, I think you used to do a lot of this too when I was working in PIC, and Sean, I remember Sean Collins did a lot of this. Issues at your airport. So say you got some issue, whether it's hangar leases or having a mechanic or CFI that's sort of working, they call it through the fence, sort of on their own independently, and stuff comes up. What are some of the things you hear about, and what do you recommend that people do?
Well, first of all,
Go ahead, Tom.
yeah, with mechanics and CFIs, with the through the fence situation, we hear that from time to time. Most airports have what are called commercial standards, and they lay out for, if you're going to do business at an airport. One of those things, these mechanics or CFIs may call us and say, hey, I've been working on different people's airplanes at the airport, and the airport's telling me I can't do that now unless I get a business license and maybe give them 5% or something. And the point being is yeah, it has to do with those commercial standards. There probably is an outfit on the field, a brick and mortar school or a brick and mortar place to get your airplane worked on. So what you're actually doing is it's not that you're competing with them, but they're paying rent, they hanging out a shingle, and you're just coming on and doing it. So again, to play fair from a commercial standpoint, all they're saying is like, and they may not allow it, they don't have to allow it, but if they do, it'll usually, if you're doing that many, it'll usually be something along the lines of, hey, we want you to get a business license, that sort of thing. But local, it's all local, so you have to talk to the airport and so forth. Some places I've heard they don't care, others do, so it all depends. Hangar leases and issues, those are a big one. Those can get all over the place. Some of them, you might have a ground lease for 30 years and you build the hangar. At the end of that 30 years, hey, there may be a clause in there that says it reverts back to the airport, including your hangar. So again, it's all in the leases, and we'll get into our pilot protection services or legal services plan. If you have that, those attorneys, especially in that particular state, can help you with those kinds of issues. Another thing I used to see a lot when I was up in government affairs is people would call in and say, hey, they just broke ground and they're building these condos off the end of runway 23 at my airport. And I'm like, well, first of all, you got to let us know before they break ground. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. Zoning was probably changed. It's not something that just springs up. So the sooner locally you catch wind of those things, that's the time to let AOPA know. And in the bottom here where it says find your regional manager or state advocacy, those guys and gals handle a lot of those airport issues. And you can find them on our website. If you go to aopa.org, see where it says advocacy, and then go to state advocacy, and it'll show you a map that's colored and broken up into, I think it's 5 regions. And if you click on that, it'll tell you who that regional manager is, and you can contact them.
And I've
also at airports, okay. And also at airports, try to find out if you've got a volunteer, an AOPA volunteer there, and they usually can be the eyes and ears as well. They can go through them.
And if your airport doesn't, you can volunteer. It's called the ASNVs, the Airport Support Network Volunteers. They're eyes and ears, because we don't hear about stuff until you guys call us. So if you don't call us, we can't help you. So definitely, there's every day we find out about stuff we would have never known. Typically, it's the day before there's a meeting. We'd like to have a little bit more warning than that, but we need to hear this stuff so we can help you guys.
And of course, if they don't remember, like we put the link on the handout for the regional stuff, but if they forget that, they can just call PIC and you guys will point them in the right direction. Right?
Yeah, we'll get them to the right regional manager.
All right. Now, I already saw questions earlier. I didn't mention it because I knew it was coming up, but you guys sometimes get questions about logging time to the point where there's a huge article or resource page that I did link in the handout on logging time and all these various scenarios. The most recent ones that you just mentioned that you've heard recently are this idea of second in command. So we can talk about that, and then if we will either hit some of the questions now or we'll wait till the end of the show, but we will certainly answer those logging questions I saw earlier. So Paul, do you want to tell us about the second in command thing?
So there's a big hubbub because obviously insurance companies are getting involved, and people will call up and say, I'm a safe second, or I'm required by insurance. And the first question I have is, do the regulations require you to be there? I don't care if the insurance company does. I don't care if the company requires you. If their 135 ops specs require you, that's the FARs. If the regulations require you to be there, that's the FARs. A lot of these 135 operations, if they're not using their autopilot or it's broken, they need an SIC. You can log that time. But if the insurance company says, we want someone sitting in the right seat, you're just a really highly educated passenger. You can't log that stuff. Is it helpful? Yeah, sitting in the right seat of anything will help you learn something. But as far as logging it, if the regulations don't require it or some subset like op specs require it, you can't log it.
And then how about this other one, and either of you, Tom or Paul, this aeronautical experience, it happened to be this thing where folks are calling up saying, I'm a little worried about flying solo at night, for the commercial certificate, a little worried about flying solo at night. In the reg 61129, it mentions, oh, you can have a CFI go along with you. Can they do that?
They can. They're performing the duties of pilot command under the supervision of a PIC, which is an instructor. It's not technically instructing. They're not giving instruction. It's not technically solo time. What it is they're fulfilling an aeronautical experience requirement. So you can't log it as solo because you're not solo, you're not sole occupant. And an important thing on there, it requires 10 hours of solo. You've got night, you've got your long cross country too. If you decide you want to take an instructor with you on your night flights because you're a little apprehensive about it, realize you're going to be paying that instructor the whole time you're on your long cross country, because it's not an either or. If you choose to bring an instructor on your night stuff, you are bringing an instructor with you on your cross country. So it's either all or none. So yeah, it needs to be logged appropriately if you're performing the duties under the supervision of a PIC. Obviously, you can log it as PIC, but it is not solo. So it's one of those weird ones where it's a carryover from the multis.
Yep.
Because the multis, you couldn't insure somebody to go fly solo in them. So they wanted an instructor on board. And then they carried it over to single engine for some reason. And now we get this question all the time.
Cool. So there it is. Hopefully that clarifies it. I know there were some other logging questions. So Dan, you want to wait till the end for those, or do you want to hit those now, or like maybe one of them?
Yeah, I think let's keep going because many of them are specific to users, so I don't want to derail the conversation. I think you guys got great topics to go, so let's do that.
All right, let's jump to this next one. We have one more CFI question that came up, and this is because, again, a recent change. I believe it's in that same article that I mentioned before. It talks about all of these, but let's just hit this because I know that actually somebody asked this earlier. I saw it pop up when we were talking about CFIs. Tell us what happened to my favorite letter of interpretation, the Corticrax opinion, because I love that guy's name.
So I actually ended up talking to this guy. He's an AOPA member and called in, so that's fun. But he had letters of interpretation out there that basically said, on a training flight, neither the instructor nor the student are considered passengers. So you don't have to be landing currency. They have your landing currency for it. They rescinded those letters, and then they changed the regs. So 6157 Alpha and Bravo used to say To carry passengers, you've got to be night and day landing current every 90 days. Now it says persons. Well, persons applies to everybody because the Cortocrax letters basically said they're not considered passengers. Well, they are persons. So they kind of headed us off at the pass there. They did put an exclusion or an exception in the reg. And let me pull it up here. And it basically says paragraphs, and this is, let me pull it up. It is 6157 Echo 5. And in there it says paragraphs A and B, which is night and day currency, do not apply to persons receiving flight training from an authorized instructor provided. And there are 3 things that need to be met for you to be able to do this. The flight training is limited to the purpose of meeting your landing currency. And then it says, notwithstanding provisions of paragraph A and B of this section, the person receiving flight training meets all other requirements to act as PIC. So that means no primary students. If you're a pre-solo guy or an after-solo guy, if you do not have an honest-to-God pilot certificate, your instructor needs to be current because you can't be landing current, basically, because you can't carry passengers. So we're talking commercial or persons, excuse me.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is the authorized instructor and the person receiving the flight training are the sole occupants of the aircraft. So you can't bring, you know, a ride along or a Gemini student in the back or an observer. Can't happen. So basically, as long as you follow this stuff, you're going to be fine. You go get current, and there's no more worries.
And of course, current is just the same rule as it's always been. 3, depending on tail wheel or daytime or nighttime, but it says 3 takeoffs and landings, tail wheels to a full stop, night times to a full stop, all the times. We got more information about that on the website, of course, or in the regs. If you go look.
And I got a question yesterday from a guy that said, well, that means I can't go up by myself and get current. You can absolutely go up and get current by yourself. There's no exclusion on that because he was an instructor. And he's like, well, then how am I supposed to get current? Well, you just go up by yourself. There's nothing excluding this. This is only training flights with a student and an instructor on board.
Cool. All right. Hopefully that's all good and clear. And so that was just it was a thing. We had a little advantage there for a while as instructors, but that's changed. I'm going to skip that one I just skipped, just so you know, was just literally a viewer. I'll just show you literally asking us the thing that we just talked about. So it just happened to be, we knew that was a hot topic and we jumped right on that. Now, here's one I remember this coming up when I was working in the Pilot Information Center. People would call up and say, I'm looking at this chart and I found this weird thing. Like, for example, I found this, and there's an article I stuck in the handout as well that talked about weird things you find on charts. And this one happens to be that MON over the airport there, which we can talk about afterwards. But what do you find something like that? How do I find out what it means? What are your recommendations there?
So if it's a charting issue, you should look at the Aeronautical Chart Users Guide. Try to, because that has every single weird thing you've never seen on a chart before. Both IFR, VFR, instrument approach plates, DPs, stars, all that stuff is in there. Didn't know about it when I was a student, found it when I was an instructor and wondered why nobody told me about it. So it literally has everything. And if you're an instructor, it has a lot of stuff you can torture students with because they have no idea what's in there, but definitely tell students about it. If it comes down to approaches, and we get this all the time, why did they do this? Why is this decision height? It's a DA. Why is it higher than an MDA? Why is this an LNAV approach, not an LPV, and all this? All the weird stuff where I can look at my crystal ball and guess, they can answer it at this website called IFP Information Gateway. It's the Instrument Flight Procedures team. These are the people that are responsible for those procedures. You go in there, look up your airport, find the plate. It has a little button that says email the FAA. You type in your question, they'll email you back, and you won't have to guess anymore. You'll know exactly why. Because I'm not an expert on the terps, they are, and they know exactly why that chart is the way it is.
Yeah, they're really good. They're really good at getting back to you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're almost like puzzles for them.
They're doing their Sudoku.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, I did put links for both of these on the handout as well. And actually, when I looked at that gateway, because I had not seen it before you guys mentioned it, it was really cool. So, yeah, it's a great resource there. And by the way, if you're wondering what this MON thing is, it is in the article that I linked, and it's just that minimum operational network. As we know, they're slowly getting rid of VORs, but we're going to keep a minimum operational network. And an airport that has that symbol over it has an approach that uses a VOR. So, in other words, if GPS were to have some issue, I can go to that airport and I have a VOR or nav-based approach that I can use to get into that airport. And so somebody's asking about the links they're mentioning. There's a handout. Look in that menu, and I think Stephen will help you out with that too. The person that just did that, Horst, asked that question. All right, let's go now. Last kind of topic before we wrap up with just talking about medical and legal in general, and then we'll get to all the questions, or as many as we can in the time we've got. But what about, you guys get calls about aircraft and ownership is another one, the paperwork, and I asked you guys to tell me what are some of the common things you hear. So Paul or Tom?
Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. There's not really a good guide out there that the FAA puts out and says, here's what you need to do. And there's nuances, so many nuances with this. But really what you're looking at, if you are purchasing an aircraft, the piece of paper that you are responsible for is the 8050-1. That's the aircraft registration application. If you've been an aircraft owner before, or you've been around a while, that's the old white and pink copy that were pressure sensitive. Now you can just print them offline. Recommend just Googling the form number rather than trying to find it on the FAA's website. But you just print out 2 of those, send in a check or money order to the FAA with a $5 money order. As a purchaser, that's all you're responsible for. Now, the seller has 2 forms that they're responsible for. Get the aircraft bill of sale, which is the 8050-2. That really hasn't changed. You can print that offline. Obviously, you want to make copies of everything that you put out there, and there's always nuances of, I'm in a partnership, I'm losing a partner, bringing on 3 other guys. How do I fill this thing out? Just give us a call. We'll help you. Don't try to guess, because if the FAA gets it, they're going to sit on it. They're going to send it back to you. They're going to do it through the snail mail, and you're going to be stuck. So just give us a call. And then the thing that everyone forgets is the current registration in the plane as it sits right now. That needs to be filled out on the back and sent into the FAA. The new owner, because we filled out 2 of the -1s, will take 1 of those, which used to be the old pink copy. They'll stick that in the airplane, and they'll use that as their temporary registration, and that's going to be valid for 12 months or until they get the new registration in the mail. Typically, you can send everything in together. I will caution people selling airplanes that if you feel, I always tell people, send in the bill of sale and the -3. Make sure you're the one that sends it or you're the one that puts it in the mail, because we've had guys that are like, I sold my airplane 6 months ago and I'm getting all these landing fee bills because the guy I sold it to never sent in the paperwork and it's still registered to me. So I always encourage, you can all send it all into the same, the address is on the instruction sheet for the -1. Recommend using the courier address with UPS or FedEx, not USPS. But I recommend people send it in. You're going to save yourself some heartburn, because that guy can disappear and he's going to be flying on your registration until it expires.
All right, good to know. And then also, though, I was just going to mention too, just in case anybody hasn't been flying for a bit, the registrations do have expirations on them now, so check it. Unlike in the old days where it was just the registration, now you've got that expiration date, so make sure you're checking it. All right. Well, let's get to, we got 2 more topics here, and then I see lots of questions coming in there too that we'll get to. The first one is, if we've got this AOPA Pilot Protection Services, which provides both legal protection, like aviation attorney type coverage, and then has the medical aspect to it as well. So maybe it's Tom, do you want to tell us a little bit about just what this legal part is?
Sure. First of all, with the PPS, Pilot Protection Services, there is a medical component to it. And what that is well, let's back it up a little bit. Your regular membership, if you have a medical question, you can call AOPA. Our medical staff will answer your questions, talk to you about any issues you may have. Where PPS comes in is that if it turns out, yeah, I had a heart condition and I know I need to send all of these documents to the FAA, my EKG. There's certain times that they have to be in by, or how valid they are. If you would like AOPA to review those before you send them off to the FAA, PPS, you can get PPS Plus, and our medical staff will then accept your, usually electronic version of your medical records, and we'll review them, the things that you need to send in. So that's the extra part. It's not, you don't have to be part of PPS as a member, just to talk about medical conditions. Okay, so that's the medical part. There's also, under the basic, you can do what's called an FAA status check. So if you already have a medical application in process, and they're really backed up, it's taken a long time, our staff can check with the FAA. They do it every week. They send a list to them, and they'll get an update on where that stands in that process. Okay.
Okay, and then we'll go back to legal.
Yeah, but the legal part, or the LSP, as we call it, legal services plan, all the aviation stuff you may run into, violating airspace, things of that nature. Yes, getting the pilot protection services with that legal coverage can really help you out. Also, as long as the same thing with buying and selling aircraft, they can review any sales agreements, purchase sales agreements, hangar tenant leases. They can review those as well. So it's a really, really good benefit to have as an active flyer.
And of
Paul,
course, too, like renters agreements, I'm sure too, all leases, all that stuff. So good. Sorry, Paul.
Yep. Anything else, Paul?
The only other thing is we can read you the regulations. We cannot give you an interpretation. Correct. Unless there's an LOI out there, which they're few and far between now.
What's an LOI?
Letter of interpretation. That is the only legal interpretation from the FAA. It comes from the Office of Chief Counsel. So when people ask, what is the FAA's interpretation? Doesn't matter what flight standard says, doesn't matter what the FSDO inspector says. If it didn't come from the Office of Chief Counsel, it is not an official interpretation.
Okay, cool. All right, and that's the basic parts there. And in fact, I know you get various levels of coverage with that. How much does it cost? Do you guys remember off the top of your heads if they wanted to purchase that? Okay, it's on the website.
Yeah,
or call 1-800-USA AOPA.
I think it's 99 for plus, and I think it's like $70 for basic.
Yeah, definitely helpful. Okay, let me jump here. All right, Dan, I know that we are coming to, for right now, we're about 13 minutes till. We'll call this the official end here for the wings credit part, but we are going to stick around because I saw lots of questions. In fact, let me just head one off at the pass. I saw somebody asking about that the instrument flight procedures gateway, I believe it's called. There should be a link on the handout. I thought I put one on there for that, but you can also just Google instrument IFP
information gateway.
Yeah,
IFP information gateway.
There it is. And you should be able to find that, but there should be a link on the handout. And what you'll do is, like Paul said, you have to kind of dive down, find the instrument approach you're wondering about. And then there's not a call thing, but it's a little button that says email the FAA. And that's where you can submit your question. All right, take it away, Dan.
Awesome. Well, I think this webinar has proven the point, the value of AOPA membership, having access to experts like Tom and Paul here. So if it's not enough to be part of the world's largest aviation community and support the advocacy to protect the freedom to fly and get the magazines and to be a part of our community and to receive discounts and savings, you also have access to these guys that can answer any and all of your aviation related questions. So please do encourage all to join if you're not already a member of AOPA to aopa.org/membership.
Cool. All right, and one thing that I want to mention before I talk about next month's topic too is, having also worked in the PIC myself, remember, as Tom mentioned earlier, you got a whole team of CFIs, and I don't know about you guys, but I used to enjoy student pilots calling up and asking me questions too. Those were some of my favorite calls because I'd get to do a little bit of instruction and help somebody understand something that they're working on. So I know we talked about a whole bunch of technical stuff here, but even if it's basic stuff that you're just wondering about, maybe you're going through training and having a hard time understanding something, you're looking for help, give the PIC a call. I have no doubt they'd be happy to chat with you about it because I said I always enjoy talking to student pilots. Okay. Our next episode, before we get to questions, is February 20th. The UTC time I did not verify, but it should not have changed because we have not changed the daylight savings just yet. So 1700 UTC, 12 to 1 Eastern time. It's getting looped in is what we're calling it right now. We have a special guest coming on with us about aerobatic basics and why it's fun and, of course, why it's valuable to learn. If you have ideas for future topics you would like to see, please contact us at ftinitiative@aopa.org. Let us know if you got something you were always wondering about, you think would make a great show. Just give us a holler or send us an email, and we'll be glad to consider that and see what we can do. All right, Dan, it is time. Hit us up with the questions.
Awesome. These are going to be all over the shop, as expected. They were not necessarily related to the conversation in that chronological order, but here we go. First one is on ADS-B. Joseph says it would be good to operate frequently in needed airspace without purchasing and installing. Is that even possible anymore? Can you fly without ADS-B?
You can. There's some exceptions. If you have an aircraft that never had an electrical system, engine-driven electrical system, or any electrical system at all, like a glider, you can absolutely operate in certain airspace. 91.225 is the reg you want to look at. Now, if you do have an aircraft that has a Mode C transponder, it has an electrical system, you just need to get into this certain airport, or heck, you need to get to the shop to get ADS-B. There is a ADAPT program. If you just Google AOPA ADAPT, ADAPT, that is basically it's a deviation tool. It's an automated deviation tool where you can request deviation authority for a handful of times to deviate from 91.225. I say a handful because there were some 135 operators that were putting in like 30, like the first day the tool came out. FAA shut them off. That's not what it's there for. It's meant for the occasional and the infrequent, not the everyday. But you absolutely can go into some airspaces, and that's outlined in 91.225. It's a little bit much for this kind of stuff, but if you go in there, it's almost a mirror of 91.215, which is the Mode C requirements. So if you break out that reg, you should be able to figure it out. And you do have a deviation tool out there that'll help you out as well.
But as Paul said, caution you on that deviation tool, because I talked to a member, he was going to a pancake breakfast, needed it like every month. And then eventually the FAA was like, hey, what's going on here? Because like you can do it a handful of times, usually designed for doing, getting your airplane fixed or something like that. But when they start to see a pattern or you've done it more frequently, then they're going to cut it off. You got to get ADS-B.
All right, thank you. Rexford asked, what is the required retention period for the VOR accuracy check record?
That's a good one.
So you got to prove that you've done it within 30 days to be able to operate. As far as retention, I'd encourage you to give us a call and talk to one of the mechanics. I've never seen anything that says you have to retain them other than being able to prove currency. Kind of like, how long do I have to retain my flight review records? I just have to show I'm current. So that might be the answer right there. I'm not absolutely sure. I would encourage you to give us a call, talk to one of the mechanics, and go a little bit deeper in the minutia.
Yeah, that's a good one. I've never seen that either for retention-wise. So,
a lot of questions on basic med. I don't think there's any surprise there. I thought this one was interesting. Any status updates regarding the acceptance of basic med in Canada?
No, not yet. AOPA, as our government affairs, has been in contact and talking to Canada continuously. The one thing folks need to understand, that's their own country. They have to decide that it's beneficial, which I would think they would as far as tourism and so forth. But there's really only so much that not only AOPA, but that the United States can do to get them to accept basic med. It's basically, they're going to have to be the ones to do it. So. But we're continuing. We talk to them all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, we have contact. There's actually an AOPA Canada, and there's an overreaching group that we have the most members, so we're in charge of, called IAOPA. So there are international AOPAs in Germany, UK, Canada, South Africa, all over the place. So we do have people in other countries that we work with, but they're usually much smaller and then they don't have the members of the staff that we have.
Okay. Back to CFI renewal. This one actually did come through in a timely manner. Sorry we didn't get to that while we were talking through, but when an 8710-1 is submitted to ACRA for the renewal of CFI recency of experience, will an FAA inspector automatically address the file, or is prior coordination with that person required?
So if you're going through like our flight instructor refresher course, we have ACRs. I'm one of them. The guy you see behind me is one of them. We process paperwork, we submit it off to the FAA. It is not an automatic thing. You do need to have some sort of certifying officer, like a FSDO inspector, a DPE, or an ACR that processes it. Unfortunately, AOPA can only process people through our FERC. We are EFERC, or we're FERC specific airman certification representatives. So if you don't take our course, you take American Flyers or whoever, we can't help you, unfortunately. We can help you get pointed into FSDO, but yes, there has to be a person in between you and that application and the FAA.
Okay, thank you. How do the new CFI refresher rules apply to CFII reinstatement?
They don't look at it as a II and MEI or any of that stuff. You're a flight instructor, so you have the same currency requirements, and they treat IIs. I assume you mean CFI II. There's not many standalone IIs out there, but you might be one. You have the same currency requirements. You're afforded the same windows and reinstatement periods as any other CFI, so there is no difference.
All right. Here's a very practical application question for you, gentlemen. Keep it in mind, there may be a broken P lead resulting in a hot mag. What is the safest way to move a propeller to reposition it so it doesn't interfere with a tow bar?
Call a mechanic.
Probably the safest thing, yeah.
If you have any question about the safe operation of that aircraft, call a mechanic, because those magnetos are nasty and they're self-contained. You can disconnect the battery and it'll still pop that prop on you. So if you have any concerns, call a mechanic. Have them look at it, disable the mag, whatever they need to do, pull spark plugs, I don't care. You can do that as a pilot if you're confident in doing it, but whatever you need to do to make it safe, because I've seen somebody who got popped by a prop on a hot mag, and there's lots of blood and it's not fun. So if any question, get a mechanic, be safe.
There you go, good advice.
Good. Has anyone used an oxygen, sorry, these are kind of piecing together two different messages here, but an oxygen concentrator like Inogen on a GA flight, and how did it work? Have you guys heard of anything about oxygen concentrators in flight?
Yeah, I've gotten this question. The FAA is silent on the topic. They don't say anything. Most of the stuff you're going to find out is not GA. It's going to be 121 flag carrier, that kind of stuff. It's a gray area because it says you have to have an oxygen supply. That technically is. I guarantee you they'll hit you with the biggest stick they can find if there's an accident or an incident because you were using one of these and not using a traditional system. But I don't see where I couldn't find. I waded deep in the weeds in this before, and I couldn't find anything that said yay or nay on them. And I don't know of anybody who's actually used one in GA operations.
Okay. All right, logging time question. We knew we'd get back to some of these. So if you fly with an instructor as a private pilot, how do you log the time? Is it dual? Is it PIC? Is it both? You're
if you're rated,
flying with an instructor.
If you are rated, let's say you're going for your instrument rating in the same 172 you did your private in, you are rated in that aircraft, you need to look at 6151. That's the logging of PIC time in there. And if you are sole manipulator of the controls of an aircraft for which you're rated, you can log it as PIC. I've seen wild stuff where commercial applicants were flying Arrows, which are complex aircraft. They're not signed off for complex, but they are a sole manipulator and they are rated. So that is PIC time, even though they can't log PIC, or they can't act as PIC. They certainly can log it. There's a huge difference between acting as PIC and logging PIC. So there's bunches of articles out there. look at the regs, 6151, but a private pilot flying with an instructor after they have their rating, they should be logging that as PIC unless they're flying something like a multi or something they're not rated in category class for.
And of course, I would just throw a clarification out there too, just in case somebody gets confused. So Paul mentioned, like, if you're training in the 172 and you fly that same 172 for instrument, typically you're going to be rated in airplane single engine land, let's say. So it could be any airplane single engine land. So any airplane that meets those requirements. So, you know, it's like you might be doing your private in a 172 and then move to like an Archer, a Piper Archer. That's airplane single engine land. You can log that there too, because you are rated for airplane single engine land. You're good to go.
And we also get the same question from primary students. The only time you can log PIC is when you are the sole person in that airplane doing your solo work and on your check ride. You can log
If you pass.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Hopefully you will.
Then the DPE would have been PIC if you didn't. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, from Ryan. Ryan says, after I retire, I would like to become a CFI. I currently fly under basic med. Do I need to have a real medical to do that?
6123. 6123 is where you want to go. You can absolutely instruct and get paid to instruct utilizing basic med, and the FAA even changed it now that the DPEs can use, and they're certainly getting paid. So it's 6123. The only thing you need to be wary of is you can't fly anything outside of the limitations of basic med. You can't exceed the 18,000 feet, 250 knots, 12.5, 7 occupant certified. But most training aircraft are well below all that. So yes, you absolutely can use basic med. You can use a Part 68 medical as opposed to Part 67, which is your first, second, and third regular and special issuance.
And check out the handout. We've got the special report or whatever the information we've got on basic med, because that'll cover those requirements, which you're allowed to do, all that good stuff. And of course, don't forget too, you have to be eligible for basic med to do that. So you had to have had an FAA medical as of July 15th. What year was it? 2007?
2006.
Right?
2006. Another thing, there's 3 items. Go if you're thinking about going to basic med, take a good look at it, because there are certain cardiac, neurological, and mental conditions that if you have developed that while you're on basic med, you're going to have to go back and get a one-time special issuance. Hopefully, that's it, and that'll be it. And then you can go basic med again. But there are conditions to that. So
cool. All right, practical application of our ADS-B talk. I rent a 1946 Champ, no electrical system. It's hand propped. Can I fly into Class D airspace, Toward Airport, of course, without ADS-B out on board?
Well, ADS-B is not required in Class Delta, so the short answer is yes, anybody can. But there are special exclusions in, what did I say, 91-225 for aircraft that were not originally or further equipped with an electrical system like Mode C valves and the like. So again, look at 91-225, but Mode C is not, or excuse me, ADS-B is not required in Class Delta airspace. Radio communication is, unless you set it up prior to entering. So if you have no electrical system, you could have a dead loss battery, a transceiver, something like that. But ADS-B is not required in Delta, so you're in good shape.
Great. Basic med practical application question. Another surprise here. Can I do the Niagara Falls scenic loop in Canadian airspace with basic med?
Nope. You're going into Canadian airspace. We get this all the time. I'm going to Oshkosh. I want to fly through Canadian airspace. Technically, airspace is their possession. You're not legal. We're not going to tell you can do it. You just legally can't. We've gotten well, how's anybody going to know? Well, the only time the FAA finds out a lot of stuff is if something bad happens. So if you want to roll the dice, that's up to you.
Yeah, bathroom break, weather forces you down, you land in Canada, guess what? You don't have a valid medical.
Yeah, bad news. So don't do that.
All right. If you have, this is from Dugan, if you have a Class 3 medical, currently, can you change back to basic med to complete all the check rides up to and including commercial, and at a later date go back to the Class 2 or 3 med, or would you advise maintaining the FAA medical certificate?
If you are looking to be a commercial pilot, it would be in your best interest. I know at Embry-Riddle, everybody got a first-class medical. You don't need it, but you'd much rather know what hill you're got to climb up before you spend $100,000. So I would always encourage somebody, if they want to be a commercial pilot and they're going to need to maintain a medical, keep maintaining that medical, because it would be crushing to get everything done, get all the tickets in your pocket, and then you find out not only can you not get the medical you need, but now you're denied, you can't even fly light sport. And you spent, $60, $80, $100,000 on those ratings. So if you're planning on doing it for a job, get the medical, keep with it.
All right, cool.
Can you act as a safety pilot when you have basic med?
Absolutely. There's no
And
question.
now remember that used to be that thing too, where it was you had to be designated as pilot in command. That's not even the situation anymore either, right? You can just be safety pilot.
It's just you can be PIC, you can be a required crew member. There's no question. Even it was silly what they had before, because 99% of the time you were acting as PIC anyways, even though you may not realize it. So it was a moot point before. It's even further moot now.
Gotcha. John has had 2 medicals and passed them both since special issuance was complete. Does he need to do basic med, or can he do basic med from here on out? So has 2 medicals, passed them both since having a special issuance. Can he do basic med?
Yes.
Yes.
With an asterisk. If the FA and if you get any communication regarding your special issuance, call our medical group. Do not guess. But special issuance is eligible for basic med, but there are certain things you need to watch out with, because you do have a special issuance, you do have a letter of authorization from the FAA. You got to be on tiptoes. So if you get a letter from the FAA, you need to call us and figure out what you need to do, because some of the letters are just, hey, if you want to continue your special issuance, do this. And some of them are, you have 60 days to do this, or we're going to deny you.
Yeah,
So
because if you don't respond to what they call an AI, additional information, they can end up yanking your medical, and therefore you wouldn't be eligible for basic med. Most SIs, and again, call us, you'll talk to our medical staff. Most of them you can just allow your special issuance to lapse, and then you do basic med. So it should be an easy transition, but there's always something a little odd, could be with folks. So please give us a call on that.
Gotcha. Stephen is a private pilot, has never used basic med. His 3rd class medical expired in November of 24. Can he enroll in basic med now, or does he have to go back and get a 3rd class medical first?
He can do basic med.
Yeah.
He's had a medical between July of 2006 and today. So as long as he doesn't have one of the disqualifying conditions, go get your medical exam, go take the course, you're good to go.
Yep.
Gotcha. Jack asked, is there any downside to doing a CMC every 2 years or every year?
There's no downside to it. I mean, you're paying to go to the doctor anyways. You can do it. Whether you report it to the FAA or not is up to you, but you have it in your back pocket. If, you can report it every year, take the course and send the new medical in every year. You'll never be uncurrent.
There you go. Several questions built into this one from Roger, 3rd class medical, big surprise. Had my 3rd class medical back in the day and qualified for basic med to get back in the left seat. When I found insurance and renting to be nearly impossible under basic med, I went back and got my 3rd class medical. So he's good to go now. The question is, have you seen basic med to be a barrier to insurance and renting elsewhere, or is it unique to his experience?
It's not unique. We do hear about it. It seems to be certain flight schools that they're basically, when they look at their insurance provider and they look at their premium, which has gone up and up and up, they try to go, okay, what can we do to get this premium down? The insurance company says, well, if you don't accept any basic med pilots, I'm sure that's not the exact conversation, but ultimately, if you only get 1st, 2nd, and 3rd class medical pilots in here, we may drop your premium a little bit. It could be personal choice too. So, but it is not an isolated case. We have heard from it, and renting is harder. It really is, because if you own the airplane, that's one thing. But there are flight schools out there that rent to basic med pilots. It's just that it might be your area is few and far between, and the ones that are there have decided they're not going to.
Gotcha. All right, this one's got a couple of caveats so I'm interested to hear the answer. Any idea if non-citizens in the country on a non-immigrant visa who do have a state-issued driver's license can get basic med? I can see the math happening in your head right now, Paul.
So I'm only speaking to basic med.
Yes.
Basic med requires that you have a state-issued driver's license.
And he does.
And he does. As long as he has the pilot certificate and everything else is hunky-dory with the State Department and all that good stuff, TSA, I don't see any reason why you can't do it. We had a lot of Europeans that wanted to do basic med. They don't have a U.S. driver's license. They couldn't do it, even though they have an FAA certificate. So if the only question is, I have a state license or a state issued driver's license, that's what you need.
Okay.
I thought we stumped you for a second, but you guys got it.
You can see the wheels turning. Good stuff. Does 90-day recency of experience, landings is in parentheses, for carrying passengers expire to the day or to the end of that third month?
I don't think it's calendar months. Let's pull up 6157 and see.
I'm pretty sure that's to the day.
I'm pretty sure it's to the day too, but we deal with this all the time. 90 days, so it is to the day.
Yeah. You got to count them, especially the 31-month days and stuff like that.
Google is your friend.
And
90 days from this date.
The second you answered the question, Robert had left the webinar. So well done. Perfect timing. Great job. It's good. We got him in. Lee, I think this is someone that we all know. Lee made the mistake of registering with the TSA. He's a CFI employed by a Part 61 school. Now, sometimes people pick him instead of the school. It's not a big problem. Just emails the candidate to go back to the TSA site and choose the school. So just a little bit of confusion that he has, or that those seeking.
Well, he's covered if he does any work outside of the school. So he's in compliance there.
Yep. All right. Well, then people that have left, we'll put it a lower priority, get to it if we can. Can you log tail wheel time while flying with a non-CFI?
I don't have enough detail for that one.
Yeah,
doesn't sound like they're rated in the aircraft.
Yeah. So technically you're rated in category and class, but you don't have an instructor on board. So it's one of those things where how comfortable are you going to be explaining this to an inspector across the table when something happens? So if it doesn't seem right, it probably isn't right. You can jump through the hoops and say, well, he's not logging and I'm sole manipulator. He's acting as PIC. If you get to that far in the weeds, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
Fair assessment.
But you can be getting proficiency, obviously. If someone's letting you fly that, you're getting proficiency. But yeah, logging it, probably not the smart thing to do.
And your buddy who's acting as PIC is taking on all the responsibility.
Yeah.
If you screw up, he's going to take it on the nose. Or she.
Okay. When we were talking about paperwork, particularly focused on aircraft ownership, what do I have to do if I would like to add my grandson to my ownership?
Not enough detail. Give us a call. But typically, the only thing that would be a little odd would be the -2, which is the aircraft bill of sale, where you would be selling the aircraft from yourself to yourself and your grandson. And then you both would be listed on the aircraft registration application. I don't know how you own the plane. If it's in some sort of entity, it might be easier, it might be harder. So give us a call. This is something we answer every day, but we need a little bit more detail.
All right. How would our friend Larry update the address for his airplane's registration?
So pilots is easy. Airplanes, you're going to have to fill out an 8050-1. I think it's box 11 on there. that says click or check here if you're only reporting a change of address. You don't need to send in $5. Just fill out that form, send it to the address on the instruction sheet. They'll update it for you. There's no easy way to do it. You have to do it by paper.
Good one.
Can you log night currency on Redbird Flight Simulator, the one with full motion?
No. Let's look, because every simulator has a letter of authorization which tells you what you can use it for. And I can almost guarantee you that isn't on that LOA. But if we look at the reg itself, 6157 seems to be the popular reg today. It says takeoffs and landings to a full stop. Person acted as sole manipulator of the flight controls, which sim have. The required takeoffs and landings were performed in an aircraft of the same category, class, and type. So it says aircraft. It has to be an aircraft.
So I think the only way that could ever happen would be if, like, probably those airline simulators that they have, those are a whole different class. That would probably count if you're somehow doing that, but not for GA stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Here's one that may be more suited to Chris as the instructor, but I think
These guys are instructors too.
Well, oh, that's true. You're right.
I play
Sorry,
one on
guys.
TV.
No disservice. Sorry about that misfire, but this is a good opinion piece for all three of you. I think I know where you're going to be headed on this one, but I'm a GA pilot, and is it worth getting my commercial rating, or is my instrument rating good enough? So
I'll start that one off just for the heck of it, and then throw you guys. So I would say that it depends on what you want to do. It's like you don't need it if you're going to fly GA. You don't necessarily need it to be earning money, so you don't have to do that. However, maybe you like the challenge of going through the training and again learning some new maneuvers. Like, because I know for me, I don't know about you guys, but lazy eights were still a challenge to do correctly. So really pushing you to like get better, learn coordination. I know I got more precise with my landings, having to do those power off 180s. So if you're the kind of person that likes that structure of sort of pushing you towards higher things, then it might be worthwhile just in terms of proficiency and learning. But do you need it for any practical reason? Probably not. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Tom. I've talked enough.
So he's getting what now? What kind of certificate?
He's a private pilot and is curious, should he go? Is it worthwhile? Should he go? Is there value to getting commercial or just instrument rating?
Yeah, I think, well, of course, the instrument rating is worthy. The commercial certificate, especially with teaching folks, you get a overall better command of the aircraft. That whole rudder control is the big thing. It's the most neglected flight input, you know, for the private pilots. I used to always remember I had one student, his nickname, I called him Right Rudder, because I was always just tapping that right rudder as we're climbing out. But yeah, in the commercial certificate, you really learn with those performance maneuvers, the use of rudder, power, aileron. So all those as they vary. And then when you get done with it, you're like, wow, I really feel like I have a better control of this machine. So I highly recommend it.
And I'll give a more practical answer. How happy are you with your insurance premiums? Because they'll go down if you get your commercial.
Yeah. Yep. Good one.
That sounds. You guys have built a nice case here. I'm convinced.
And actually, when you get out of the instrument, a lot of people, the way I did it, you know, private instrument and then into my commercial. When I got into my commercial, it was fun because the instrument, until the light bulb went on doing my instrument rating, it was tough. Not gonna lie to you, it's tough.
Not to mention, I don't know about you guys, but like during instrument, your landings go to hell too. It's like your landings are horrible during your instrument. So it's good to practice that.
I failed more instrument applicants on landings than anything else on the flight.
So yeah, worthwhile for that too. And I love power off 180s, honestly. Those are one of my favorite maneuvers to do. I love doing those.
And also, we've now learned that we don't go to Paul for our instrument training.
I don't do check rides anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you log time as a safety pilot without paying a share of the cost? See where he's headed there?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah.
So you are a required crew member for the time that you're there. Typically, let's say if I wanted to fly with Chris, if I pay everything, no one's going to care. FAA doesn't care. I paid everything. So you can share it if you want. That's pro rata share, private pilot privileges, but you don't have a common purpose, really. You're there because he wants to get instrument current. So really, if the pilot who needs to get instrument current pays for everything, there's no, in the way the question was worded, I believe the answer would be no, you don't have to do pro rata share. I don't think it would be applicable unless you guys were going to switch places and get instrument current yourself. Then it would make sense. But if you're only there to be safety pilot, it wouldn't pass the pro rata share common purpose. You have a reason to be there. So I would recommend you not pay pro rata share, and the guy who wants to get current foots the bill.
So the only thing weird there would be strange one would be the guy that's being safety pilot wanting to pay for the whole thing. That maybe would get into the why would you do that? But yeah.
Have you guys had any, or can share any examples of wins where someone's called in, particularly airport support network volunteer with an issue, or any issue that someone's called in where airport support network volunteer was able to help and have a win, a positive outcome for GA? Anything come to mind?
Not personally. We're usually the middlemen. People call in all the time. We're having a meeting tomorrow, or more appropriately, we have a meeting in 4 hours. We want an AOPA rep there. Well, that's probably not going to happen. But almost everything that comes across our desks either comes in from an ASNV or comes in from a regular member saying, hey, they want to put, what was one? They want to put a prison on the airport grounds. You know, I don't think that's aeronautical use. So, like I said, a lot of the stuff that you do see as wins, we heard from members in ASNVs. I don't have any specific examples because I'm not a regional manager and I don't exactly know all the ins and outs of what they do.
Yeah, but they have given heads up before when, especially like I mentioned earlier, they noticed that there's a notice of a zoning law restructure. That's a big key that, you know, they're up to something. And the ASNV has alerted, I know there's been a couple places where they've alerted us to that fact. And as they got more into it, yeah, they were planning a school off the end of the runway, you know, so they had to change the zoning. So then there was enough time to actually get even local support, local pilots, even the local government for that matter, to, you know, to the case as to why that's not a good idea. And, you know, we win them that way.
Cool. Sam is part of a flying club that is a registered LLC, and the aircraft is 100% owned by that LLC. When a member sells their share and a new person comes on board, do we need to report anything to the FAA?
Yes. So the makeup of the LLC has changed. The FAA is scared to death that there be a non-U.S. citizen in that LLC. So they need to send a letter of update to the aircraft registry supplying the information. If you search FAA LLC info, they're going to show all the information you need to send into the FAA for initial registration. You would want to send a letter to the FAA just updating that LLC information, what's changed. But yes, if you update the membership, it is the LLC who owns. Everybody's a member of the LLC. If the makeup of that changes, you do need to report that to the FAA.
Okay. On an instrument approach in IMC, you break out and have to do a go-around during landing. Is the missed approach point, not quite the right language here, but is the missed approach point still provide terrain clearance?
That's a good one because it's all that. I wonder, what do you know the terps? Because of how far out does it? I assume they would build that in because people have to go around.
So basically, you come down, you break out, you have to do a go around for configuration. You forgot the gear, whatever, and deer on the runway, whatever.
Right. So you're down to the runway now. Yeah.
So you would need to, and it's weird how it's worded. You would when you do go around, you'd have to climb, obviously, and you'd have to fly on a lot of approaches. The missed approach point's at the end of the runway, so you'd have to
I
climb.
think what he's getting at is maybe MAP here is the missed approach procedure. So it does that missed approach procedure still provide
that could be
clearance? Is probably what he's getting at. Because obviously your missed approach point's typically near the end of the approach end of the runway. So it's like you're coming in, you've already gone past the missed approach point, you're into that landing phase, and oh no, I got to go around. Now I'm starting the missed approach procedure later than I normally would. Does it still provide clearance? I would think that the TERPs would cover that, but I don't know. And I was wondering if you knew that.
I don't know exactly. I would call the missed and look for instructions from ATC if nothing else.
True,
but this maybe I'm reading it differently, but they broke out, so it's not necessarily a missed approach. They're just choosing to do a go around. So,
well, it depends on how low the clouds are, because you could break out but still be in IMC conditions, even though you're in VFR, but you can't fly VFR because the clouds are too low.
Right.
And you're going to climb to safety and get back into the clouds. Now you need that missed approach procedure.
So just call the go around and ask ATC for help. If you don't have ATC,
maybe a non-towered field,
go to your minimum safe altitude on the plate and get in contact with approach or departure or center, whoever you're talking to, and try to get guidance. That's a very specific, nuanced question, and there's a lot of variables there. So I'm apprehensive to say yes, absolutely, because I don't know all the details.
I like this one because I'm thinking, and by the way, I don't have it here with me. I'll show this one. Rod Machado's Instrument Pilot Handbook, he talks about the TERPs like crazy in there. I'm going to go dig into that now because this is a good one. And I kind of want to know what the deal is with that one, because I bet they've built something in for that instance, but go find out.
Yeah, I mean, you're outside of the published procedure at that point. You're below the altitude that you need to be at. Once you regain your altitude, I'd say, yeah, you have obstacle clearance, but the in-between part, I really can't tell you.
Yep. And then also you have to think, again, this is just my opinion, on saving my bacon. If I can't land that airplane, I know that the missed approach procedure is out there in front of me. I would, again, like Paul said, get a hold of ATC, which would probably be approach, or whomever you talk to last, as you're starting that climb out. Try to raise them up. But my brain says, I know that's good. So that's the way I'm going to go, but hopefully get a hold of ATC before that.
Yeah. I'm sure it gets into climb angles and all that stuff too. So yeah.
I think we've got a great one to end on here, guys. While flying VFR with flight following, clouds changed rapidly, and I was temporarily in the clouds, exited without incident and without communicating that fact with ATC. ATC then asked if I was in the clouds. I said no, as I was no longer in them. If I did a full disclosure that I was in them and now out, would I have been reported or asked to call the phone number for potential violation?
Technically, you're at odds with the regulation. I would tell you to fill out a NASA form for sure. Anytime you feel like you should fill out a NASA form, do it. It's not going to hurt you. I'm a big fan of not admitting over the radio that you've done something, because that's all recorded. But certainly, if you aren't in the position that you were, where you got out of the clouds, you need to let ATC know what's going on, because at that point, it's an emergency if you're not an IFR pilot. So don't ever let the fact that, oh, I might get in trouble, keep you from declaring an emergency if you're in a spot that can kill you, and it kills pilots every day.
Right. And not even just not an instrument rated, even if you are instrument rated, not on a clearance, or especially not instrument proficient, because I know the ASI stuff, Air Safety Institute stuff, always says that VFR into IMC kills a lot of instrument rated pilots because they're not proficient or whatever. So that's an emergency.
Yeah. And
use a little,
you're turning or descending or whatever you need to do, get out of it.
Yeah. And also a little situational awareness. If you see it coming up, and you're on flight following, let them know, hey, I need to deviate for weather or for a cloud, and in worst case scenario, do it and then tell them, because that would constitute emergency if, what you need to do to maintain that safe flight. But the communication's the key there, and foresight before it happens, if at all possible. Yeah.
And I would say too, remember when on flight following, unless you're like in airspace and they've given you a vector or an altitude for traffic, they may assign you, right? If you're just doing that, you can do whatever you want anyway. They're not telling you, they're not like controlling you, they're just providing traffic advisories.
Yeah.
If you were under something where they're giving you a vector for traffic, then again,
Correct.
I agree with Tom. You need to stay clear of the clouds. You do it and then just tell them afterwards. I've had that happen with situations. I've told stories on the show here before with icing, and I never got in trouble. I told them like, I can't go in there because I've got icing, and this is what I did. They have no issues with that.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to tell ATC, this is what I'm doing. I am descending because there's clouds. You need to figure it out for me.
Gotcha. Great stuff, guys. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned when we talked about AOPA membership, just proof is in the pudding here. Great set of resources, information, standing by, ready to support. So please do consider joining AOPA.org membership to get access to these great gentlemen, their brains, their knowledge, resources, as well as much, much more. And that's all we have for today.
And don't forget, February 20, next episode on aerobatics. I want to thank Tom and Paul for being here. As you see, you can ask them anything. So give them a call, 1-800-USA-AOPA. They'll either know the answer or they'll point you in the right direction. So, all right, everybody. Right there with you, Dan. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Tom and Paul. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
All right, take it away, Stephen.